right, thank you everybody for coming. So I did want to give the disclaimer again real quick. We are recording this presentation. So if you have questions and don't want to be on the recording, just hold your question. We will end the recording at one point, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions after the recording is done. I also want to quick do a couple introductions, just so you know who we are. My name is Sarah Olschlager. I am an academic advisor here. I just recently took over the nursing program and the PTA program.
Yeah. And hi, I'm Xanthi Kuhn. You might have recognized me. I probably was in your arrow. Currently right now, I oversee a diagnostic medical sonography, surge tech radiography, and dental hygiene. Those a couple other smaller programs.
So,
rolling?
Yeah.
All right, great.
So today we're going to talk about this transition. We're transitioning from a petition process to a waiting list process. This process is designed by the state to prioritize in-state residents. So this meeting today is we're going to talk about exactly what that means for out-of-state students. Hopefully by the end of this, you're going to have just a general idea of at least information to make informed decisions on what you want your path to be moving forward. Our main theme for today is transparency. We're just going to tell you everything that we know. I can't promise you're going to like everything that we say, but we're going to be as honest and forthcoming with information as possible. We're going to answer your questions to the best of our ability. And then we're here to support you and help guide you on whatever next steps you find best for you. Okay. So what is TCS 10? This is a state statute that is governing the Wisconsin Technical College system. So the changes we're making here are also, we're changing to align with that TCS 10 statute. The entire Wisconsin Technical College system is having to do the same thing. It's going to look slightly different at every college just because there are some nuances that we each have control over. But the main pieces of what we had to align to is going to be consistent with all of the institutions within Wisconsin's technical college system. And so we're also going to touch today on how it affects you as out-of-state residents, and then we're going to talk about some next steps. So I'm going to take a second and just read this statement for you. This is kind of one of our governing, like, overall arching statements of what we're doing. So the college is committed to ensuring transparent, consistent, and fair access to undergraduate programs with a limited capacity. The college will establish a program waiting list when there are capacity limitations and or the program has established academic preparedness criteria based upon accreditation or student success data. All of the program waiting lists will be managed by Student Services and be administered in accordance with Wisconsin TCS 10.07. So what this means is that the switch from petition to waiting list, one of the main factors of that is equity and fairness in getting into programs. So instead of being an excellent student and competing with others and it just luck of the draw with who you're competing against in that application process, what this process does is it's going to allow students who just have to meet the minimum requirements that are set by the program that they believe is a student to successfully complete this program has to be able to meet these benchmarks. And anybody who does that then is just ordered based on their residency and admission date. And then anybody that lives, again, this is where that residency becomes relevant, right? That students are ordered based on that admission date and their residency, given priority to in-state students. So anybody who lives in the state of Wisconsin, we believe will be able to complete their program. It's just a matter of when and getting through that program, as long as they can meet all of the benchmarks for that academic preparedness. And we'll walk through that, kind of what a little bit of that means.
Anything else from this one?
I will just point out that it no longer is going to matter where somebody works and kind of some of the extra things that might have been involved in the petition process. We're just looking at that academic preparedness. Okay, so this talks about that residency that we were talking about. The statute divides it into 3 categories: in-district students. For our district, that's mostly Rock and Green counties. Non-district state students, so that's anybody else who's in the state of Wisconsin, but that does not live in our district. And then, there are non-state students, so those are anyone outside of the state of Wisconsin. And that does include international students, even if they're currently living in Wisconsin. So residency is confirmed one time as part of your academic preparedness qualifications. So when we say academic preparedness qualifications, we're talking about, essentially, that's kind of what used to be like pre-petition readiness, the things you had to do before you could petition. That's what that academic preparedness is. And so residency is now one of those piece factors there, and providing proof of residency. So this is what will be accepted to prove your residency. A state issued photo ID, driver's license, operator's license, identity card, a tax return document, just the most recent filing, vehicle registration document, bank account statement with your address, voter registration documents. If you cannot provide one of those forms of documentation with a Wisconsin address on it, you'll not be eligible to join the waiting list. That's different than being able to access the program depending on how the numbers fall, and we'll talk through that in a sec when we get to a little further in the presentation. But non-state students, so somebody who cannot provide that with Wisconsin, is not considered an active part of the waiting list. So here's a little bit about what that waiting list means in the different categories. So we have a pre-core status. This is students who are currently not academically ready for the program. So what currently is that pre-petition status when you're working on all of those factors? Proof of residency will need to be provided in order for somebody to move from pre-core to core ready. And it cannot be changed once it has been provided. Okay, so it's a one-time thing, and there's no option to update it later in the process. So at core ready, that means the student is academically ready for the program and they're just waiting for a seat to be filled. So at this point, this is where students are ordered on a waiting list for our in-state students. So non-state applicants are not eligible to maintain a seat on the waiting list. But non-state applicants can be offered a seat in core program courses once all in-district and non-district state residents have been enrolled. Okay, so what that means is, so we just had a petition period, right? In February, we had a petition. So next year, we're on the waiting list, or it's gonna follow a similar timeline. So say in February, we're looking at, these are all the students who are in this core ready status, and they are academically ready to move on to the core program section of the program. If we don't have enough students who live in Wisconsin who meet all of the requirements, at that point in time, we can look at any non-state students who do meet all of those requirements. We just have to see everybody on that waiting list who meets the qualifications first. Does that make sense? I know I'm like giving you like all sorts of things with new terminology. Okay. I do want to mention one thing too. You provide your proof of residency one time. You just can't move forward to be fully ready to go into those core courses until you've provided it. So if you're still working on some of your other courses, if you live out of state right now, but maybe you're thinking about moving to Wisconsin, just don't provide your proof of residency yet. Wait until you're in that final living space to do that if you want to get onto that waiting list. And then core active is just, that's once students are actually in those core courses. That's kind of the terminology we're using with the waiting list.
And as far as it comes to these terms, we know that this is new for everybody. We will be providing more documentation about what these terms mean, what exactly this means for you, so you can better understand your timeline when some of these steps are supposed to occur. And we'll start to communicate that more next week as well.
Okay, so this is just boiling it down for you. We will never be able to guarantee an out-of-state student a seat in the program's core courses, but we also can't guarantee it would never happen because it all just depends on who is on the waiting list and how many students are ready to progress forward. But I think one of the big differences for in-state versus out-of-state is I feel comfortable saying that if somebody is in-state, we can guarantee them they will eventually have a path to finishing their program. Somebody who lives out of state, we just cannot guarantee it because it all depends on which students we have in the pipeline at any given point in time.
If they can.
And we'll
Yes,
talk about that in a
exactly.
moment. So I kind of spearheaded this next part, and I'll talk about the chart. So we decided that people are going to want numbers, right? You want to know and understand where exactly would you fit into this process, where exactly you do this. So I'm sharing this data with a couple of asterisks, caveats along with it, right? So this is a waiting list that's derived basically off of our petition process, right? We had the petition process, we had people apply to the program. Everybody who applied to the program was presumed to basically be program ready or wanted to be considered to be as such. Fantastic, great. So we ultimately have seated our candidates. We've selected who we're going to put into these programs. So what we did was we subtracted the people that we selected against the numbers of petitions we had to basically figure out who would still be on that waiting list, right? If we were basically starting using only that process. This is not controlling for out-of-state students. This is not controlling for any sort of, like current grade standards, but this is basically looking at, hey, if the waiting list started last semester and you had to petition to be on that waiting list, where would we be essentially, right? And for a lot of these programs, we're looking at varying different levels of capacity, right? A lot of these, you're looking at your cohort size. If we have 12 students that we can seat in a semester, great. We're going to be looking at longer waiting times, especially for some of these higher demand interest programs. But there are other programs, right? For example, for mine, Surge Tech, where we actually do have a pretty decent number and margin as far as it comes to students who are getting academically prepared, then getting seated into the program and who are progressing, right? Each program looks very different as far as it comes to what that kind of, I wouldn't say backlog capacity is, but what that waiting list volume actually looks like there. And Sarah, I know you wanted to talk specifically about your programs, as they're both a little unique.
Yeah, so PTA, you'll notice we didn't include some of the numbers on there. So PTA, physical therapist assistant, that program, they still have space in the fall for the fall cohort. They have a couple more students that if somebody were to get academically ready, even though the petition period is closed, they haven't filled that cohort yet. So that's a program where they do have academic preparedness requirements, right? There's coursework you have to complete, some extra steps you have to complete in order to be program ready or core course ready. But right now we're not anticipating a waitlist time frame because everybody that's academically prepared so far is getting into the program at any given time. Nursing tends to accept more students. They have both the full-time and the part-time track. So it makes it a little trickier to identify the exact time frame, just because if a student can only do full-time because they need financial aid and they need to be in at least 6 credits, part-time is not gonna be an option for them. I also wanted to just mention just some numbers for you in case it's helpful to just get a general idea. So for nursing, we have 54 students who had petitioned and did not get offered a seat for this upcoming fall cohort. And then I just sent a bunch of emails to nursing students. Nursing students who have nursing preclinical as their primary program, I sent, I think it was 194 emails. So that's how many students are kind of in that backed up time frame, that are still in preclinical, but they didn't choose to petition. So when we're looking at numbers, it's just a little bit tricky to know at what point will all of those students be ready to move forward and not. And I think any given year it could change and fluctuate.
There's 2 other things I'd like to put forward as a part of this. Number one, for many of our programs, we are moving as far as it comes to testing, right? We'll talk about that a little bit more once we get rolling with our program meetings. But in some circumstances, we may be looking at having you do the HESI exam, depending on what your T-score was. If you're part of the DMS program, we'll be looking at the HESI no matter what, as far as it comes to that. As far as it comes to that too, we are also still actively evaluating our students and actually trying to get that active waiting list number. And that's a large task that we've undertaken, and Ariane's been working on that, and I'm super thankful that she's been doing that. But it is something that we want to be able to provide you an accurate time to get it right. We just want to have you have some general information that we feel all as a group comfortable with sharing to get you kind of an idea of where you'd be. Now, as far as it comes to, is this going to be the absolute? No, this could change a little bit as far as it comes to that, but we wanted to really get you an accurate, this is where we are right now, so you can start making some decisions and some choices as well.
I do know that we are still doing some work analyzing student data. We have to see how many of our students, I sent 194 emails to nursing preclinical primary program students. Are they all still taking classes? Are they all still planning to continue the program here? We don't know that because we don't cut people out of our system for a period of time. So there's some extra research we're still doing behind the scenes to try to narrow this down to get more accurate waitlist time estimates. We are hoping at some point over this summer, is that still the plan? Yes, some point over the summer to kind of produce some additional numbers that we hope will be a little bit more accurate with what we actually know about where students are in this process. Okay, so we're gonna move on to talking a little bit about what are our options moving forward, okay? Because we just boiled it down. The path for out-of-state students is just very up in the air and it's very dependent on what the wait lists look like at the time we pull information. So the first step is to breathe, take a moment, consider all of our options. A question to ask yourself, is declaring Wisconsin residency an option for you in the near future? Is that something you're actively considering or in the process of doing? If it is, just put a pause on providing that proof of residency until you've made that change. Obviously, I know that's not going to be an option for everyone and that's not in everybody's plans. So in that case, there's a variety of things to consider. Is another program an option for you? Whether within the health sciences, you saw there were some programs that had shorter wait times than others. If that's something that you've already been considering, maybe those different career fields, we can certainly talk about that and see if that's a good option for you. Obviously, Blackhawk offers a variety of other program options, career paths that we could talk about as well.
Another thing too, that I didn't get into the PowerPoint and I totally forgot to beforehand that we were talking about. Have you all been receiving the emails that I've been sending about the program meetings that are coming up next week as far as it comes to that onto your BTC email? If you're still interested in your program, I still recommend coming to them. We will be going over those academic preparedness requirements, what you'll need to make sure that you can get into your program, because still those academic preparedness requirements are key, right? That is still going to be the main like a huge driving factor as far as it comes to this. We will still have people that are in-state residents, but we aren't able to get up to that standard, right? If we really run out of qualified in-state applicants, we are going to be looking to our out-of-state students, right, to fill those spots. We'll be looking for you. We'll be wanting you to make sure that we can run a full cohort. We want you then to be academically prepared and to know that info. So if you still think that this is something that is of interest to you, it is still to your benefit to go to those meetings next week. And I highly encourage it. If you haven't been paying attention to them since you've been focused on this meeting, feel free to grab me afterwards. We can talk about when your meeting would be for your program as well.
We're also recording them all, and then we'll share out the recordings as well.
And they'll also have Zoom links too. And we'll know how to work them this time.
We also recommend taking time to explore your options. I know for at least some of the programs, some of you are here at Blackhawk because your Illinois didn't offer a local program for you. I think that now that we've made this change and as Illinois starts to feel the impact of that, I think that will change. I think that they will start developing something on their end. They almost are going to have to in order to fill their workforce. But that can take time. That's just something the way the system works. They've been, there's this pathway for students that's real close. And so they've met their needs through this. But if that's not going to be possible through some of our programs, I think that other solutions will start popping up. Hospitals still need all of these different people in these career fields. So they're going to have to fill those gaps somehow. If you take some time to think through what your options are, we're happy to meet with you. And we're going to be scheduling out, we actually have time scheduled this afternoon to put it on our calendars. Sometimes a lot of time available at the beginning of April to meet with students to talk through any questions related to this changeover, as well as just if you want help thinking through your options. Even if those options are leaving Blackhawk and exploring options other than that, we're still happy to support you and to help you figure out how transfer credits work and how to navigate some of those pieces. We're available, so please reach out.
And on top of that too, I don't want you all to make a decision today. I mean, if there's one thing I could say as far as it comes to that, right? This is a big decision. You've also received a lot of information right now. As far as it's like you may want some time to explore and say, what does that actually mean for me, right? Is this something that's worthwhile to me still? Is this still where the direction I want to be going? Great. Take that time to digest, take that time to think about it, right? Because a move like this is a big one. And also one of the things too is we're in year kind of zero of this, right? We officially roll out with this starting, with this next upcoming like academic catalog in year. We're still very early days in this process as well too. There are definitely things that it's like could adjust, could change. The state said what they want to say, but after a year of doing this, things may look different as well too, right? I'm also going to be transparent about that, and having been part of the work group for the better part of a year, looking at my boss and thinking like, yeah, we know how many times things have changed over this process, right? And we're only sharing this info once we felt settled that this is going to be the game plan going forward. But as of March 20th, 2025, this is what's happening. But don't feel super pressured to know what your rest of your life is going to look like at about 11:30. I don't think that's realistic for anybody.
So this is the end of what we had prepared, but I do want to ask real quick, any of my colleagues in the room that have been part of this process, is there anything we missed or that you want to emphasize before we end the recording of the presentation?
You guys did a great job presenting it.
Okay,
All right.
so we'll go ahead and end the recording and then move on to